What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Monji TV. On today's episode, we've got this 435i in for a bunch of leaks. We're going to be doing oil pan gasket, front main seal, oil cooler, oil filter housing, oil cooler O-rings, and potentially some other stuff like valve cover and any coolant lines that are necessary. A better look at this. Hopefully you guys can see all that buildup there and the wet oil right there next to the oil filter housing, which is creating a mess down the whole front of the engine and all over the belt. We may want to change the belt and the tensioner as well. The oil pan also is disgusting. We'll show you from the bottom side, but we're just going to quick spray down real quick before we bring it in, and just shoot a little power wash down there just to kind of help clean things up before we get to it. Just a little something goes a long way. Just to show you guys now we can actually see nice shiny metal parts. I could probably actually hit it again with some more degreaser and go after it again, but sprucing of the frame rails and whatnot here, I think the customer will be very happy with it once he gets it back. So let's keep on moving on. All right, guys, we just took the car for a quick little spin. Everything seems to be running well. I know I can expect no issues when we put it back together. So yeah, this car is actually a really nice color. I don't know if it's Silverstone. Maybe it's Silverstone, but it looks like Silverstone, but a slightly more blue hue. To be honest, most people seem to have B58s nowadays, so it's always nice to see a customer with a 435, you know, or a 335, because generally they're actually in better condition than a lot of like the previous E-Series 335s or the 340s, just because they aren't being modified to the 9s like the 340s are. So a lot of the stuff has already started to basically dry. I just got it warm so that we could kind of get rid of some of the moisture, as well as while we're working on it, just not have water dropping on our head. So first things first, let's get it up in the air, and we'll get the wheels off. We'll get the front subframe out of her. We'll get this thing hoisted up. All right, guys, you can see how filthy the oil pan is here. Look at some of these hoses. They're just caked with oil. Unfortunately, I didn't order any of those, but I might have to call the customer and tell them it's needed. Here, the front main seal is puking. A bunch of oil from the oil filter housing. Obviously, we tried to spray off what we could. Once we get the subframe out, we will degrease the steering rack and the whole subframe for the customer. We will also be power washing and degreasing this oil pan. Part of the actual problem is the guy's got a blow-off valve here, and that's actually probably releasing a lot of this oil we're seeing as well on the side here. And then our buddy Chad is coming through to help us. You guys probably remember Chad, but we'll reintroduce him here in a second. So let's get after it. All right, guys, the Chadster is here. We've ripped the wheels off. He's tearing into this coolant line on the cross member. We're gonna go ahead and zap these bolts here at the knuckle side for the control arms. Hopefully we don't have to pull the charge pipe out, but the charge pipe is actually sitting quite close to the oil pan here in this section, so we may have to pull the charge pipe. I'm hoping not, but these transmission cooler lines are kind of smushed up against the pan and that charge pipe, so we'll figure that out here in a bit. I'm gonna try and do All right, guys, it's kind of a ritual when Chad's here and we're working on cars late night. Boba, he got a Thai iced tea coffee from this place called Thai Thai. Super fire here in Oceanside. They've got some of the best Thai food, but enough about that. We're gonna grab some dinner real quick and then we're gonna get back to it. All right, guys, tie rods are loose, control arms are loose. The one here in the back is also off, but we're gonna leave that in as there's tension on it right now till we bring the subframe down. Steering shaft has been removed. You guys can see that there. We've already removed the rear bolts on the subframe and these braces. We're actually just gonna leave the brace in the car and kind of slide the subframe down and forward. One last thing I forgot, we gotta get these motor mounts. And then hoist the engine up from above, and she'll hold herself in place after we remove those motor mount bolts. So we'll get that done right now, and then we'll zap the 2 last bolts holding the rack in, or the subframe in, my bad, and bring her down. All right, guys, we've gone ahead, pulled the oil cooler lines off here, and the face of the oil filter housing, basically the oil cooler thermostat section off. We've pulled the belt off. We're gonna go ahead and get this oil filter housing off. We do have to lift the intake manifold, so we may do that after the pan. But just to give you guys a quick look, you know, upper hose is off. It's got a disconnect here, and then 1 small little hose here, 2 little connections, and the radiator. Radiator plastic is looking pretty worn out. This upper hose is definitely super worn out. It's turning quite brown and yellow there. So that's like the plastic breaking down. It actually snapped, as you guys can see right there. It's so brittle. And the belt is okay, kinda, but it's starting to show threads. At the very least, we'll probably just do a couple more hoses, these gaskets obviously, and that oil pan, and we're gonna get this front crank pulley off to get the front seal out as well. Chad's working away on the oil pan bolts. Got to get the 3 tranny bolts out still. We are going to replace the gasket here for this oil level sensor. And after we clean the oil pan and reseal it, we're probably going to go to town with the power washer on all of this. This thing's going to look all nice and new. We will give the transmission a quick power washing as well, just to also help, you know, diagnose whether or not this transmission pan is leaking, so we can, you know, when we see this car in the future, tell him about that. But anyways, let's go ahead and just keep moving on.
Yeah, boy.
Go that extra mile. Yeah, this thing is kicked. For being a 2015, this is probably one of the worst ones I've seen. Still in decent shape. Obviously not all of them. Alright guys, here's a quick look at all the parts. Here we have obviously our oil pan gasket. We got some new oil pan bolts. We got some oil cooler lines to oil cooler thermostat O-rings. Front main seal here inside this box. There's a quick look at the part number. And oil cooler thermostat seal, oil filter housing, gasket. All that we really need to get this 435 buttoned up. We'll give you a quick look at what we've done so far. Everything is looking real clean. We did spray the engine before we pulled the pan. Did as much as we kind of could. We got to get this crank pulley off. We'll do a little bit more wiping down behind that. But the oil pan surface has been cleaned up, ready to go. We're gonna get everything real clean, as good as we can do. This is like dirt. It's actually not all just oil, so it's like oil caked dirt. It's even harder to clean, but we've done quite a good job just cleaning off the bottom of this turbo and the side of the block and water pump and whatnot. After we get the pan back on, obviously we don't want to spray it with the engine open like this, but yeah, we'll go take a look at the oil pan, or I guess subframes out there. We did bring the oil pan in. Inside the oil pan is very nice and clean, looks brand new, and so does the underside. We'll give you a shot of that once we kind of install it on the engine, but next thing is to install that oil pan gasket and the new bolts. All right guys, we got the front main seal out. It was a little bit of the pain. For whatever reason, like on N54s and S55s, they're really close to the edge, but on the N55, they're actually pretty sunken in. And so we actually had to smack it inward, which sucked. Thank God we had the oil pan off, and then we were able to just snip it on the inside and pull it out. But it's all clean. A couple little rough edges from just trying to get it out, but that's it's part of the game sometimes. They just get real stuck. So we'll go ahead and get the new seal in there with some primer. Right here, you gotta have this special tool. There's some special sealant and a primer to activate it. So we'll put the primer on first here, where the case comes together here and here on the inside there, and then we'll seal it up with the actual sealant. All right guys, we're about to pop this oil filter housing off. We've got the bolts out of it. We've gone ahead and just barely, it's hard to tell, but lifted up the intake manifold. So I can literally just grab this and she'll pop right off. Makes a big old mess. We'll go ahead and clean this up, set it over here just to drain. Slap on our new gasket, torque it to 22 Newton meters for the 3 to the block, and it's 19 Newton meters for the oil cooler thermostat to the actual housing. We ended up doing the Mickey Mouse hose, the kind of nose of the hose and the O-ring just snapped off per usual with these Mickey Mouse ones. You can see here it's just broken off and how bad shape that hose is in. So we're gonna go ahead and get that changed, as well as the upper hose. And to be honest, we should probably do the lower and water pump and other stuff. But at the very least, those two hoses have to be done. And as you can see here, this heater hose is pretty smoked. System rebuild, but not everybody is willing to always pay for it. So let's get this oil filter housing cleaned up with some carb cleaner and some paper towels. We already finished the front main seal. Pulley's been torqued to 22 Newton meters, 20 Newton meters plus 90 degrees. And we got to go ahead and get all this fluids in the car after we get our pan on. And yeah. All right, guys, the oil filter housing is all nice and clean, or the mating surface to the block is all nice and clean. I've also cleaned up the actual oil filter housing. As you can see here, it's all nice and clean. Sprayed it off in the sink with some degreaser. So we're gonna go ahead and slap the new gaskets on this thing, torque it to 22 Newton meters, and oil cooler to 19 Newton meters. So here are the gaskets for the oil cooler and the oil filter housing.
Bolt the filter housing on.
Filter housing first and the cooler. All right, guys. So we ended up having the wrong oil pan gasket, so we had to wait. It's the next day now. We've got the oil pan mating surface all cleaned up. It's been drip drying for a few days now, so it's super clean and no oil really dripping on us. Oil pan, as we've showed you before, is all cleaned up. So we're gonna go ahead and slap the gasket on it and install it in the car and then get the subframe up. Let's do that. If you like this video, be sure to check out the next one. And if you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to subscribe and like the video. It helps a lot. Thanks, and see you in the next one.